Hi, I'm Andrea Metz, one of your friendly HACC librarians, and I've created this PowerPoint and video to talk a little bit about the different kinds of publications that you might be asked to use when you're doing your research for a particular class. And the three types of resources that we're going to be talking about are scholarly, popular, and trade publications. So let's take a look at some examples that I have here for you. First, we're going to take a look at the covers of some of these different publications. The first one that we're looking at here is an example of a scholarly publication. You can see that it does have a little bit of color, it's got some blue, but it's not a cover that's particularly eye-catching. There are no photographs or images. It's basically a list of the contents, the titles and authors of each article that appears in this issue. And anytime you see a title that starts with journal for the or journal of the, that's a good indication that that is a scholarly journal. Our next cover shows, obviously, a popular publication. And I like to think of popular magazines or even newspapers as something that you might see when you're at the grocery store going through the checkout line, and they have them right there for you to purchase, or maybe you're at your doctor's or dentist's office in the waiting room. This is the kind of publication that you're going to see there. Basically, it's a little bit lighter, it's provided for entertainment. Many times they do provide information in a popular magazine, but it's not the same kind of scholarly research that you would find in a scholarly journal. And the third type of publication that we're going to look at is what we call a trade journal or a trade magazine. You can see here from this title, this is a pretty attractive title, it's nice, or a cover rather, it's eye-catching, colorful, but from the title of the publication, you can see that this is something that's geared toward people working or students studying in a very specific field. The title is The Police Chief, the Professional Voice of Law Enforcement. And so really the only people who would have an interest in reading this are people who are working in law enforcement or perhaps students studying criminal justice. Let's take a look now at some of the content that you'll find on the inside of these different types of publications. This is obviously an example of something from a popular magazine. It's a recipe with the lovely photo of a salad here, and it gives you the recipe and tells you how you can make it and get dinner on the table quickly for your family. And next we have an example of the front page of a scholarly article. Again, there's a little bit of color, but not a lot of pictures or anything that really catches your eye. You can notice from the title, it's a rather long title and it uses a fair amount of jargon. Jargon means the vocabulary that is specific to a particular field. And as you skim through this first page of the article, you might also notice a lot of jargon or vocabulary that you'd really have to be working in this field or be a student studying this area to even understand what these words mean. The other thing you might notice is there are quite a few authors to this article. That's very, very common for a scholarly publication to have 7 or 8 or a dozen or more authors who all contributed to the research. Notice too in the upper part of the left-hand column there's a short abstract, which is basically a summary of the article. That's not something you're generally going to see in a popular magazine. The key to remember is that a scholarly journal contains the results of original research, and that's what makes it different from either a trade publication or a popular title, either a magazine or a newspaper. And this is true whether you're looking at something in print or looking at something online on the internet or through a library database. In many cases, probably most cases, the articles in a scholarly journal go through a process called the peer review process, which means that experts in the field have looked at every single article and analyzed the articles before they are allowed to be published. And that gives that article some extra credibility. You know that people who know what they're talking about, they're experts in their field, have agreed that this article is something that should be published, that it's important, it advances the field and provides original research. So our next example is an article from a trade journal. It's not quite what you might expect to see in a popular magazine. You can tell if you look at it closely that this is something from a nursing journal, and it's been written, or nursing trade journal. It's been written by a nurse, and it's really geared toward nurses. If you were a nursing student or certainly working in the nursing field, this might be something that would be interesting and helpful to you, but probably not very helpful to the general public. And then let's take a look at the last page of articles from each of these three different kinds of sources. This is a great example of the last page of a scholarly journal article. You can see on the right-hand column there's a long list of references. That's very common. You're going to see that just about all of the time in scholarly research. And this, again, helps to provide extra credibility for this research that you're reading about. Let's take a look at this example of a trade journal. Notice that it does not contain any references. The last paragraph just ends with conclusions. You can see there are some tables and charts that provide information. You may or may not see something like this in a popular title, but clearly this is something that is geared toward a very specific area of the population. As you can see from the lower right-hand corner, the title of this trade journal is Hispanic Business. So it's something that, a magazine that is geared toward Hispanic business owners and operators. As we saw with that example of the nursing article, if you don't fall into that category, you probably wouldn't be that interested in reading this particular article. And then here we have a great example of an article from a popular magazine. One of the very interesting topics that people love to read about is the British royal family. And we have some pictures of the Queen and the royal estate. And I want to point out to you too, if you see on the upper left, there's a quote set off in a larger font. And below it, it's attributed to a source on Will's trip to New York City. And if you look in the paragraph below that, there's a quote from an insider. And that source and the insider are never actually named. So that makes this article and this information, at least some of the information, a little less credible. If the person is providing quotes but they don't want to be identified, that means it's maybe something that you can't trust quite as much as a scholarly or a trade article, for instance. The last thing I want to take a look at here are the citations and the format that you would use to cite these different types of publications. You can tell from looking at the title here, this is clearly a citation for a popular article. Hallmark movie featuring former Desperate Housewives star to film in Lebanon. This is a popular source because it appeared in a newspaper, the Dayton, Ohio Daily News. And so this is just an example of what you would see if you're looking at a citation and how to tell that this is probably a popular source. The next one you can maybe see from the name of the publication, American Salesman. This is a really nice example of a citation for a trade article. And the title of the article as well, Building an Effective Referral Network, really tells you that this is geared toward people who are working in the field of sales. And then last but not least, we have our scholarly citation. There are 4 different authors listed. The title of the article contains that jargon, that really specialized technical vocabulary. And the very last line contains the DOI, which stands for Digital Object Identifier. That's a unique identifying number for this particular article. You could think of it as the social security number that identifies this article and allows you to find it really easily on the internet or using a database. So let me just show you very quickly now how to use the library databases to find a scholarly article. And I'm going to start right here at www.hacc.edu, our main website for the college. And below the pictures here, the revolving pictures on the lower left, is a link to library. You can click that and scroll down just a little bit to the list that says Find. Notice you have options to search databases by subject or databases A to Z. I'm just going to, at this time, click on the alphabetical list. And the very first database in the list, Academic Search Complete, is a good database to use because it covers a broad variety of subjects. Probably just about anything you would be looking for you could find in Academic Search. So we'll click this to open up the database. Notice you have your text boxes up here where you can search for your keywords. And what I want to show you is under Limit Your Results, you have this option to select a box where it says Scholarly or Peer-Reviewed Journals. And if you are required to find a scholarly source, you're going to want to make sure that you check that box so that you're automatically weeding out anything that would be from a popular source, and you know that you are only going to be finding the results of scholarly research. Good luck with your searching, and thanks for watching.